Yusuke Urameshi is a delinquent with nothing to look forward to but the fights he partakes in, as there is only solace in a world so unwelcoming to him. School and its rules constantly restricted him, but in a fight, he has full control and is able to end the conflict when he so chooses. Everything is in his hands, opposed to the school that is largely beyond his control. While Yusuke did have a place in fights, in a sense, they were meaningless so long as he had nothing more. A fight would only last so long before he had to return to a life that constricted him. Teachers having it out for him, a mother burdened with caring for him, and a girl who wasted her time on a delinquent like him. So when he sacrificed himself for a child, it didn't really matter to him if he came back to the world that had no place for him. No one would miss him, and perhaps some would even be better off without him. There were no regrets in his heart until his notion was proven wrong, when he could see how visibly shaken people were at his untimely death. Despite fighting, pushing against the world, and not making his own effort to connect with others around him, he still wasn't alone. There was no need to feel like his life had no value, and it was fine for him to embrace others as his friends. When Yusuke returns, he can appreciate life knowing those in his life aren't being held back by his presence. His high value on fights is still there, but it's more purposeful as he isn't just fighting for his own sake. He chooses to protect others, and now he's fighting to make sure he returns to those who want him in their life. Goro contrasts that idea, because unlike Yusuke, who has a place outside of fights in the form of his comrades, Goro tossed aside the prospect of bonds after the deaths of those he loved. As a human, he had place with Genkai, despite those he'd lost, but he turned his back on that, and purposely chose not to seek a new place of belonging, disregarding humanity, living only to fight. That decision was born from hatred of the idea of weakness. Goro believed himself to be the strongest, yet he was powerless before the demon who claimed the lives of his comrades. While he could avenge his comrades later in the Dark Tournament, their lives were already lost. Goro would carry that guilt, and for him, it would become unshakable. So he became a demon to continue getting as strong as he could, due to his failure in the past resulting from the lack of strength. He saw his life as now only having worth if he could continue to overcome others in battle. It was a path of self-destructive torture, because his actions were all explicitly made with the past in mind, rather than moving forward. Unlike Genkai, who could accept that the passage of time inherently meant that things will be lost, but she also realized that you could make use of that time and gain things you didn't have, and she showed that by raising someone such as Yusuke, who would surpass them both and put an end to Togoro's carnage. As much as Yusuke desired strength and conflict, he couldn't turn his back on humanity, nor could he forget his friends. Yusuke and Keiko's relationship in particular is similar to one Togoro could have had with Genkai, as the main person who gave reason to fight and return, not to abandon one's place and choose isolation and only focusing on battle. That path became a strength because Yusuke was able to grow stronger from the bonds he decided to retain, both as a fighter and a person, wells of power springing forth, and being able to understand his own values from seeing where Togoro's path differed.
どこかであんたに憧れてた。しょんべんちびりそうにビビりながら、その強さに憧れてたんだ。母さんは何度も教えてくれたのに、俺は全てを投げ打ってでもあんたのような強さを得たいとだけ思ってた。てめえが捨てたものの重みはようやく分かったぜ。俺は捨てねえ。しがみついても守る。
This arc ends on a high note for Yusuke, because he has a solid grasp of his own values, and was able to defeat Togoro without any loss, but soon after, Sensui began to undermine his progression, as he forced Yusuke into another conflict with the world at peril due to his own rejection of mankind, because of the sinful actions depicted in Chapter Black, which caused him to be in natural conflict with Yusuke, the current spirit detective, who would naturally be the defender of humanity. When they confronted each other, Sensui had appealed to Yusuke's wishes, from being able to understand how the desire to fight for a cause and or protect can warp into the inclination to fight in general, since he too was in that position as the previous spirit detective, leading Yusuke to revert to how he once was, and only caring about the fight before him and disregarding others, endangering humanity even further because he focused more on beating Sensui than closing the hole that could allow demons to invade. Sensui purposely chose to throw away his place with others out of disgust, while Yusuke's place began to become unclear due to his desire to fight starting to be put above the safety of others. Yusuke did let humanity be put at risk through his selfish actions, but there is a subtle difference that makes it clear he hadn't fully reverted to who he was in the beginning of the series. When he saw he couldn't win, he decided not to disregard the world completely, and even use his death to give back to the world. He assumed his death would have value to those around him, and push them to become stronger, and they could possibly beat Sensui in his stead. In the beginning, he felt no one would care if he died, but here he uses his death as a tool to instigate others' growth, through their grief of his passing. He didn't end up truly passing due to being part demon, but that was a mere coincidence, and it showed Yusuke's awareness of how he belonged with others. And even if he was going to be selfish in life, he decided to let his death rectify that were he to lose because of it. Chapter Black represents a relapse in Yusuke's character, and what would further that was Raizen's interference with his battle, leaving Yusuke dissatisfied and not being the one to overcome Sensui, when he had the opportunity to because he had lived, which made him want to settle the score with Raizen, but the hole allowing travel between realms was closing, so Yusuke decided to return, rather than risking him being trapped in the demon world. His decision wasn't something he could take full satisfaction in, as he was left wondering if he made the right choice, since he was still bothered knowing loose ends were left. In knowing the conflict wasn't fully settled, it made the itch for danger fester, since he was aware what was out there and he couldn't focus on the life in front of him. In the beginning, he didn't know there was something else he could focus on, but now he's aware there is, but is having trouble focusing on it as he once learned to do. This dissatisfaction continues to eat away at him until he decides to give in, when the opportunity to go back to the demon world arises. Going off without those he calls friend is seemingly a choice to turn his back on the place he has with others, emphasized by the first spirit detective going as far to say she doesn't feel he belongs with humanity anymore. Despite that, he promises his friends he'll be back within 3 years. While Yusuke was initially there to settle the score with Raizen, he learns of the clashing ideals between potential rulers of the demon world and becomes invested in finding a solution rather than just being there to fight, culminating in his suggestion to hold a tournament in order to solve the power struggle taking place, but also satiate his desire for conflict, which subsequently avoids the path to Goro walked, of giving up everything in order to keep fighting and getting stronger, finding the middle ground, and being able to fight in an unpredictable strong tournament with many strong fighters, but also not giving up his friends, since he would return to them afterwards. He's even able to be fighting for a cause. While Sensui paints the desire to fight period as a negative, Yusuke is able to mesh his wish to fight with an inherent cause of having the demon world be able to find a ruler through fighting in tournament. Since Yusuke learned about the demon world and wasn't able to just fight Raizen off the bat, he was forced to learn. Yusuke was able to learn how to not throw away his comrades for strength and conflict. Fighting is important to Yusuke, but he's able to not live for that sole reason and keep his place in the world. Even in peace, we're able to see Yusuke laughing with his friends and find joy in operating a small ramen stand of all things, no longer being the delinquent with nothing to look forward to other than battle, and being ready to marry Keiko, who he once thought was wasting her time with him. He finally accepted his place by her side, therefore accepting his place in the world. Kraftsdorf also uploaded a video on Yu Yu Hakusho, so check that out.